Minnesota Original is made possible by the State Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
On this edition of Minnesota Original, the Minnesota Historical Society's collection of more than 6,000 Minnesota paintings, prints, and drawings showcases the history of our state through its art. Sharra Frank creates a mosaic with thousands of pieces of hand-cut colored and gold leaf glass for Children's Hospital in Minneapolis. Together since the early 90s, their soulful rock music continues to evolve. The Honeydogs, with lead singer-songwriter Adam Levy, perform.
Robbing stores with an empty gun. After all of this,
These artists and more, now on Minnesota Original.
You know, the Historical Society has hundreds of thousands of works in its collection. And within that, we have an art collection of more than 6,000 items. And that includes paintings and works on paper and some sculpture. The painting collection, I think, is our strongest suit. And it's an area of particular interest to me because it's been such a long and rich history of painting in Minnesota. I'm Brian Zott. I'm a curator of art here at the Minnesota Historical Society, and I'm in charge of the art collection. Our mission here, primary mission, is to collect art by and about Minnesota, art that tells the story of Minnesota and its people and its history. I think a visual history of something is very important because a work of art in a historical context can become a window through which the viewer can go on to so many different topics. So it's a very accessible way to learn about one's history, about one's past, and about one's locale. Well, this is one of our stars in our collection. It's a painting by Seth Eastman, commissioned by Henry Sibley, who lived in this house here in Mendota. This is a scene taken from the Fort Snelling side of the river looking onto Mendota. Seth Eastman was a soldier and an artist stationed at Fort Snelling during the 1840s. And Henry Sibley was here as part of the American fur trading post. And it depicts a Native American family on the move. Seth Eastman really forms a foundation for our art collection. We have not only oil paintings, but numerous watercolors, which he's better known for. We have dozens of watercolors in our collection, all the small scale. Oftentimes they depict Native American living in around the Dakota that were living in and around the fort. There are a number of other artists in our collection from that same period of the 1850s to 1900. Their job was to depict what they saw. And so it's particularly strong in portraits of people who lived in Minnesota and the landscape around us. So Fort Snelling, St. Anthony Falls, Minnehaha Falls were all popular scenes in the metro area. Seth Eastman thought of himself really as a ethnographer, really documenting, because he saw that the changing way of life for the Native Americans was imminent, and so documented as much as he could. What's so special about them also is that their colors are still as vivid as the day they were painted. They've been cared for, and this is really one of the functions that we at the Historical Society do best, is preserve this and allow future generations to see this work. This is a painting of Fort Snelling in 1888 done by Alexis Fournier. Fournier was born in St. Paul, so he's one of our first sort of local boys in the collection. Largely a self-taught painter early in his career. Sponsors like James J. Hill and others actually paid for his study in France in the 1890s, but this work in the 1880s was really largely of his own accord. This is what is the West 7th, what is now West 7th. So you just come over here today, this bridge, or the bridge now is near Standing, this point, and you will enter a tunnel just on the other side of the fort, and then you emerge and you're exiting onto the airport road. A lot of times you see a scene, a locale that we've seen before, and we see how it changes through history. And it puts a perspective on our contemporary society as well, our contemporary lives, as we're rushing down the highway to get to work. So this is another highlight of our collection. It's an 1888 painting by an artist whose last name is Larpenteur, the namesake of Larpenteur Avenue in St. Paul. Titled St. Paul from Pig's Eye. It's a great autumnal scene of the Mississippi River Valley. And if you look carefully on the left-hand side, you'll see a couple standing on the hillside. And he appears to have in his hand a camera, so he too is enjoying the scene like we are. In the distance, you can see downtown St. Paul. One of the high points in Minnesota history as in terms of art is really the WPA, which had its start in about 1934 and continued into 1941, where scores of artists were hired to make work, and it was placed throughout the state in hospitals, schools, libraries. It employed hundreds of artists and really represents a golden age in art making, because in Minnesota they hired both young artists and established artists to make work and solely make work. Some of that includes, examples of which include these two. This is one of my favorite works by Ingrid Edwards. And here you have all method of communication. You've got the movie director with a megaphone, you've got the newspaper boy shouting out today's headlines, someone speaking on the telephone, a switchboard operator, and not to be outdone, we have what I assume are not volcanoes, but smoke signals on the horizon. There were two big themes in WPA era art, and one, of course, was capturing the landscape, and the other was glorifying or paying tribute to the American worker. And so this work by an artist named Dorothea Lau depicts workers on their well-earned lunch break. Dorothea Lau was a very young artist during the WPA in her early 20s. And we can see her work really grow dramatically in that period of time. I give tours to the collection to a variety of audiences. I make the work in the collections more accessible than most museums. I've given tours to descendants of artists and to scholars alike who want to see the collection in person. If these artists were all living today, they'd be doing the same thing that contemporary artists are doing. They're exhibiting, they're teaching, they're showing their work to numerous audiences. That's the beauty of local art, I think. You know, there's an old expression that all politics is local. Well, for me, all art is local. And in order for it to succeed at any level, it has to first succeed on a local level. I like to say that we've had Minnesota originals for over 100 years.
As I've been working on this piece for the Children's Hospital, I've been thinking a lot about a family member who was recently in the hospital, and it really inspired me to, make this piece just to provide an uplifting feeling to the children and their parents at the hospital.
Now hold the wings, now grasp the waves now.
I like that my work stands out in the world of factory-made objects. I think it's important to surround ourselves with things that are beautiful and inspiring. This piece that I'm working on right now is called Moon Dance. The theme of the third floor in the Children's Hospital is movement that inspired the design. And I just, had this vision of a little girl dancing out in the moonlight and just feeling really free. And then I included some animals, some of her friends in the background with the butterfly and the bird. The overall size of the piece is 5 feet by 6 feet. I'm using many different materials, ranging from stained glass, glass beads, vintage rhinestones. Each piece is hand cut. Some of the parts of the design I've sculpted, I've built up, so you can see the trees kind of pop out a little bit. I like to think of the dimensional pieces as sort of like a pop-up book effect. I think that might appeal to the children. I was inspired to start building and sculpting the surfaces by a customer. She had requested more of a rounded surface, so all these bells just went off, and I couldn't believe it had never occurred to me to go that direction before. But now I'm going to work on this little music note. I'm going to use a combination of beads and a button, because I think a button would be really sweet. So I was at my friend's house for dinner one night, and I noticed a plaster bust she had. I ended up taking it home that evening, and the result was Drama Queen. I covered the bust with seed beads and found objects and some of her mother's jewelry. The face was made up of crystal seed beads, and in the eyes I used vintage rhinestones. Over the torso part of it, Italian glass tile that I hand cut into flower petals. In the hair, I used many found objects. I had trays of buttons and brooches and things I had been collecting for years, and a lot of them went into that piece. People often ask me if I import these from somewhere, which I think is really funny, but because I make them all myself, one piece at a time. I spend most of my time on the details. So the butterfly and the bird and all the leaves and the flowers got a lot of attention. The sun behind the girl in the design is going to consist of 3 different types of glass. I'm going to use the gold leaf glass here that I made with the metal foil, and also this yellow glass. So when I start working on a project, I start to bring out different materials that I think I might like to use. I just let them, hang out around me while I'm working. I like to put them into containers that are appealing and inspiring, show off the material.
You can add it up, it's simple math, sum total of fragments. Look to the stars or ancient maps, you'll end up where you started. Pieces of love fall into place, fall into place. Pieces.
It's easy to get caught up in the details and put a lot of time into one section. It actually goes faster than you think. So I've gotten this much done, and I still have this much left to go. But that's all right. That's what I do. So I haven't seen this piece since it was installed a couple weeks ago. It's pretty exciting revisiting something that was so close for that amount of time. Wow. It's good to have some time away from it and come back and to see it with fresh eyes. Looks good. I'm really happy with seeing it on the wall and out of my studio.
I see a bird. A lady is dancing and flowers. This is my moon dance. And what pieces did you use for this flower?
For that flower, I used little tiny beads all in a row.
I love to be with you.
What I'm trying to convey in my work is, I think the beauty of it is, it really is more about play and form and just the pleasure in looking at different forms in different ways. My name is Randy Walker, and I'm an artist. I work primarily with fiber and frameworks, and I do small pieces and public art as well. In my work, I've woven or wrapped various objects, from badminton rackets to pencil holders to cooking utensils and sieves to corn cribs and saw blades. I think the scale of the pieces is a continual fascination. In the studio pieces, everything is very intricate, and I'm working with sewing thread, and so a world is created that you look into. And as those pieces increase in size and scale, the potential exists for you to enter the piece and experience it architecturally. So the transition between those two scales is, it's continually a challenge. Well, this is a cheese curd skimmer, I'm told, and very intriguing form to me because it's like a butterfly net or a fish net, except that it's rigid, which makes it ideal to weave. Generally, I have somewhat of a plan when I start a piece, but not a complete plan, or otherwise there'd be no reason to do the piece. This is actually the second cheese curd skimmer that I've attempted to weave, and so I do have an idea of what I want to do. And in this piece, I know I want to start with a color and fade it into other colors. And it is an investigation pretty much of the space inside that net-like form. People have different reactions to the work. A lot of people look at it and say, wow, that must be very, meditative or therapeutic somehow. It does look like that, the end product, but making it actually is sometimes a real pain in the butt. The key is to enjoy every pass that I can get successfully through here without the thread fraying. This is a frame piece that is actually going to be for my own home. It's an aluminum frame with steel bolts, and it is going to be woven from this piece over here. This is a little paper lantern made by my son when he was in preschool, and the colors are just very inspiring, so I'm kind of basing it on that. And the idea is that, I start at the base of the bolt and I use the threaded bolt to catch the thread. And then I work my way out towards the ends of the bolts. And by the time this thing is done, there'll be a thickness and it will become less planar and have depth to it. In order to do this kind of work, I have to change my focus from a finish product to just the process of doing it. And I don't look ahead to the rest of the piece. I try to really enjoy just the process. I'm looking for something that I can do that sounds fun. It sounds interesting to do and see what the result is. The thread is just this really efficient way, visually efficient way to do something, It's so teeny materially, there's nothing to it, right? But visually, there's more presence there than there is physically. It fills this space, it has this impression, but it's just a little thread.
Just killing time or injuring eternity. Riding on the vine, this drunken fruit is burning me. Scars on top of scars on top of scars. There's no safe pathogen. Your Habsburg lip and my ego trip, robbing stores with an empty gun. After all of this, the trauma and the bliss, there is death by boredom. Can't make love to a train, can't get gasoline from rain, but still they say nothing is impossible. It's a very thin line between vintage and vinegar, a relative decline in standards of our giving. After all of this, the trauma and the bliss, there is death by boredom. Blocking digital distractions and analog invasions. Blacked out by demon notions, swept up in red-headed oceans. I should have known the prayer was in my own backyard. This path we're on has killed everyone, what's taking it? If we don't change routes quick, there's gonna be another wreck on it. After all of this, the trauma and the bliss, there is death by boredom. Death by boredom.
Minnesota Original is made possible by the State Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.